This is Scott Richmond
and Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 1015 FM. Arnie Sherman, good morning. We have a great guest today.
I'm very excited about this show. We have Justin Philbrick from Jaker's Barn Grill, and there's a great story and backdrop for our discussion with Justin today.
Right.
Regarding, they had a fire at their company in February of 2016, and the restaurant was shut down for 4 months.
Right.
And he paid all of his employees. I don't know how many. We'll find out. I think roughly 60.
He didn't pay me, and I was one of his employees. He didn't know that.
Bus boy.
Right.
You're the bus boy. But he paid them not only full salaries, but they figured out the staff that had that worked on tips plus salary and figured out what their average tips would be and paid all of that, which is extraordinary given how normal business folks operate. But that leads me to a question for you. Growing up, did you have any heroes? Because Justin, to me, is a business hero, right? Did you have heroes growing up?
I did.
Who are your heroes?
Okay, in the order of...
Yeah.
Sports was Keith Hernandez.
Right, Keith. And go ahead. And who else?
Tex.
Yeah.
Music was, of course, Lou Reed, as you know. I'm just trying to think of who else were my heroes. My dad was my hero,
right?
Until he decided that he didn't like to go to work anymore and wanted to play jazz.
Right.
Okay. He's a jazz musician.
Right.
My brother's my hero. My brother, whom you know.
Right.
Really, great guy.
Those are good heroes.
Yes.
So let me tell you about my heroes now that you've given me a chance to
who are your heroes, Arnie?
Well, I'm a slightly, older, so my heroes are a little bit older. But I had Bobby Kennedy, who, as you know, I met twice.
Yes.
During my life, two of the probably highest, highlights of my life. Martin Luther King, just because I lived through that and saw it in real time, in real life, and that was, he was a hero. In sports, Mickey Mantle, the flawed New York star. He was the first he was the first sports figure in my life where you got to see the human side of it. He was not just all glossed over like, Joe DiMaggio or these other guys during their life.
Right.
Mickey, you knew was out drinking. You knew he had, issues going on. And he was the first
like
guy.
Hernandez was in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I liked Paul Newman, not just because he was a great actor, but because he created Newman's Own and gave all the profits from a very lucrative food company to charity.
Right.
And then probably the one that's the oddest of the heroes for me was Shirley Chisholm.
Really?
Yeah, who in 1968 became the first black congresswoman in the United States.
Right.
And then in 72, you might not remember this, she ran for president of the United States.
I didn't know that.
When McGovern got the domination for the Democrats,
okay.
Shirley ran as a candidate for president. She arguably, because they calculated it differently back in that era, but she arguably won 3 states. She was very quotable. She said she ran into more discrimination running for Congress and for president as a woman than she did as a black American.
Right.
She had more discrimination against her as a woman. And probably my favorite Chisholm quote was she said, "Don't measure Americans or America by our achievements. Measure us by our potential." Because she came out from being a child care worker and a school teacher. And so she was one of the first larger-than-life local, because I was, growing up and living in New York. She was the first larger-than-life person in the local area that kind of motivated and intrigued me and inspired me.
Amazing.
Because of her uphill, struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the time when they were lynching, community workers in the South.
Sure.
And there was a lot of civil rights turmoil, and she had the mendacity or the audacity to not only become the first black congresswoman, but she ran for president of the United States in 1972.
I can only imagine the character assassinations that she was the victim of around the media in the late 60s, early 70s in New York.
Yeah,
right?
I paid big money to see her debate Donald Trump and see how that all came out.
Right.
But we have our own local business hero that we're going to talk about. And, he may not consider himself that way, but I can tell you in the community, the buzz is, what a great, thing to do for your company, for your employees, and, and for the community to take a position like that and to, pay your employees for the time that the business was, not operating due to a fire. So we're going to have Justin on the show in a minute, and we're going to chat about his his exploits and about Jakers in general. This is an interesting business story. And Red Robin and some of the other things they're involved in.
But I think that's right, and I think more folks that take their look at their local business as a main contributor and catalyst for the community in not only employing folks in the community and feeding families and helping folks pay mortgages, but also just
well, there's enough bad guy stories, right, about people who triple the price of drugs and are business whores, if I can use that expression. And there's only a few of the good stories. People like, guy who runs Zappos or Whole Food or Costco who pays more than the minimum wage and pays their employees well and treats them well. Those stories are often outnumbered by the men and women who run business and rape and pillage as they move towards focusing on the single goal of making as much money as profit. I mean, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country's CEO the other day said, "We're not in the business of helping sick people. We're in the business of making money." I mean, that's that's
got to
true.
Be careful.
You
got to be careful.
Have to be careful. So we have a different story to tell today, an upbeat one.
I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to be back with Justin from Jakers right after this. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, 1290 AM, 101.5 FM. Back after this. All right, we're back with Justin Philbrick from Jakers.
So, Justin, before we talk about the fire and how you took care of your employees for the 4 months, tell us a little bit about Jakers. For our listeners who think of it as just the location on Brook Street in Missoula, tell us about the company and a little bit about its background.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me here. I'm honored to be here. Jakers it has something for everyone, and that's what I've always loved about Jakers, and that's what captivated me to want to work at Jakers for so long. 20 years ago when I started out, was that the menu had so many choices on it, and regardless of what time of day you wanted to come in, we had something to take care of you. We had a great lunch program going on. We have our soup and salad bar,
which is like the last bastion of soup and salad bars in our town.
You can't get anything like it anywhere, not only here but for miles away. Our happy hour, the way we take care of guests in the afternoons and stuff, and then with our dinner program and the steaks that we do. Burgers, kids menus for kids. We now have a pizza oven, which we've had for many years in Missoula.
You make great pizza.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
How many locations are there, Jakers, and where are they?
We have 5 Jakers. We're here in Missoula. We're in Great Falls. We're in Idaho Falls, Twin Falls, and Meridian, Idaho.
Right. And then are there affiliated restaurants that you have a stake in or that the parent company owns?
We have some ownership in other restaurants. We also fully own, Jake Jones and I own the Red Robin here in Missoula.
Right.
And Billings, Montana. We're the Montana franchise partner for Red Robin Gourmet Burgers. Jake is part owner of the Mustard Seed here in the mall. And we also have ownership in a restaurant called Elevation 486 in Twin Falls, Idaho.
What kind of restaurant is that?
Similar to Jakers, but scaled down.
Okay.
Not quite the array of menu items, but busy bar and located right on the Snake River, so amazing views.
So was your background in hospitality industry or food industry, or did you just grow up there?
I grew up there, absolutely. Not in my family, but there was what we call a greasy spoon back home. A couple 100 yards up the road, my parents went on a vacation to Florida. Grammy was taking care of us. And when they got back, I had rode my bike up the road and got a job washing dishes at that restaurant. And, the rest is kind of history. But I fell in love with it. I liked it. I liked the activity. I liked the people. I liked everyone, the people are young. People are, and then learning to cook. I had a passion for cooking. And, I got my start in that. And then, when I moved, born and raised in Maine, when I moved to Missoula, 20 years ago, I started working at Jakers 2 weeks later.
So you were like 19 years old.
I was 19 years old.
I saw Justin in action over there. He doesn't stop moving.
Right. What's your typical day like? Give us a typical day. Because some people, restaurants are hot, right? There's all these name chefs, and everybody in their mind fantasizes about being a fancy chef. But I see it as a lot of work and long hours. Am I wrong about that?
No, not at all. And from our manager's perspective, that's what it's all about, running that day to day. You have to have routine, and you have to have consistency in a restaurant in order to maintain that consistency for the guests. So, if you're not on line check at a certain time, if you're not, at the front door at a certain time, and you're not in the kitchen when you need to be, problems are going to arise, and you got to be there to solve them. So
how early do you start and how late do you leave on a typical day?
Usually I get up around noon. No.
Yeah.
Go
take a sauna.
It's a real happy hour.
Yeah. Right.
Hit a round of golf. No, my job's a little bit different. I'm as partner in our restaurant company and director of operations for both Red Robin and Jakers. My day could be a lot of different things. Who knows how it's going to start out sometimes, but I may be on the road traveling to one of our 6 other locations. Right. I may just be spending the day at Jakers or Red Robin in Missoula, or I may have an administrative office day with conference calls and advertising, planning, these types of things.
I want to get into more detail about the restaurant business because I think it's interesting for our listeners. But tell us about the fire and what was the result of all of that. Because that's the real heartwarming story. Even though a fire doesn't sound like it's one of the exciting things you want to see happen to your restaurant business.
Well, it was the last thing I expected that day. Of course, I was out of town. That's the way these things always happen, right? Don't burn the place down while we're gone.
And that was February 24th.
February 24th. Yeah, I got the call at about 10 past 7 in the morning, and I looked down and I saw my phone, and I said, oh, no, it's work, it couldn't be too big of a deal. And then got another call, and obviously took that, and, it was they were reporting the fire to me. I mean, it was going on, as it was happening. And I said, well, did you call the fire department? They said, yeah, they're just getting here, that type of thing. And so that was not what I expected to wake up to that day.
It was a kitchen fire.
It was. What we had was a gas line fire. It's a gas hose that goes from the main line on the wall to a piece of equipment on the line. And that had a hole in it from having the equipment moved out and then back in to clean behind and that sort of thing. And so the guys came in the morning. There were 3 of them there at 7 o'clock to do their counts and whatnot. They went to fire up the charbroiler to get the equipment rolling in the morning. And when they did, that hole in the line caught fire. And, well, we had gas under pressure, now on fire. And we had a flamethrower basically in the kitchen. And the 2 guys that we had there, God bless them, they were okay. But they immediately tried to beat down the fire using the kitchen extinguishers. And they couldn't control it. And the only way to make this fire stop was going to be to kill the gas. And so in order for the Ansel system in a kitchen like this and that is above the hoods to deploy, the fire has to reach a certain temperature to make that happen. Well, the guys beating the fire down kept the temperature down, right? And then when they decided they had to get out and they weren't going to be able to control it, the sprinklers came on. And now the fire had been, the temperature of the fire was brought down again. So then the fire department was there so fast. From the time we called them, they were there so quickly. And they immediately came in, went around back, killed the gas to the fire, and then put out whatever was burning.
So did you know at that time how long you were going to be out of commission?
I've been in the restaurant business for 20 years, and we're operating 6, 7, 8 different restaurants at a time, and I've had some minor things happen, and I'll get the call and I'll be like, okay, guys, how are we going to be able to put this back together and be open by 11? Shouldn't be a big deal, right?
Right.
Are we going to have to push back the open? What's the extent of the damage here? Because people tend to overreact when you're talking to them, and so at first that's kind of what I was thinking.
Right.
And my manager says, no, this is a little worse than that. That's probably not going to happen. In fact, the fire department, we weren't able to get in there for a while until they were sure that everything was set and electrical and gases and everything was off and all that.
So how many people a week or a month do you serve out of that restaurant, or were you serving?
Oh, that's a good question. We serve lunch and dinner. Probably 15,000
a month.
Yeah,
15,000 people
somewhere in there.
So this thing is
15,000 meals.
Yeah,
or 15,000 meals. Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of meals.
It's a ton of meals.
So
500
you can do
a day.
Right.
No, it's more than that.
No, it's more than that.
It is.
15,000?
We do
50,000.
We do about 500 a day.
500 a day.
Between lunch and
I was
dinner.
right the first time.
Yeah.
Let me go back and correct.
So
yeah, you were.
You're shut down, and our listeners probably know you're shut down for 4 months.
I was.
You end up being shut down. How many employees were working there?
We generally employ between 60 and 70 people, depending on seasonal spikes and that sort of thing.
So,
I think at the time we had 64.
So for most businesses, you got 70 employees, you had a fire, the place is out of commission. You say, look, we'll hold your job, come back in 4 months. What was your thinking that led to deciding to pay them all for the whole time? That's what's the fascinating part.
I didn't have to think about it at all. There was no other way to do it. It was a relatively easy decision that I could make pretty quickly. Jake agreed. I was able to get a hold of him, and we knew going forward that was the message we had to get out to our team members right away. Because once we were allowed to get in the building and assess the damage and stuff, Chris, who I'm close with Langless Construction, he actually drove by, saw the flames. So did a lot of other people that just know me and stuff. So after I had taken the initial call, the texts and phone calls started rolling in and that sort of thing. But we just knew that, it was the right thing to do and it was what we had to do. That decision was made as soon as possible when we knew it was going to take, at least at that time, a couple of weeks to restore the damage.
Right.
So we said,
was there any
absolutely.
equivocation from it when you figured out it was not a couple of weeks, but it's going to be 4 months?
No. And, as a matter of fact, it was a tough situation because we had made that commitment and there was no way we were going to veer away from that. And it did take some conversations, some tough conversations and some negotiations with insurance.
With insurance?
In order to get it through.
Keep going.
No.
I was going to ask you, so you said it was a no-brainer to make that decision. What went into, what were the considerations? Why was that a no-brainer?
Well, first of all, these people are our family, and their family,
right?
Going to work together every day. And I know a lot of these people on a personal level. I know, about their financial situations with kids and mortgages and different things. And some of them, taking care of grandkids, these types of things. They have obligations and, they're the people that take care of us in the long run. So if we take care of them, they take care of us, and that works that way.
But the generosity of the package, I mean, a lot of places, even if they've made that decision, which is a laudable decision, might have said, we'll give everybody $200 a week or $250.
Right.
You made a decision, apparently, to pay them salary plus the tips, the average tips they would have had. You paid, I guess, benefits, continued, just as if you were still opening and operational, right?
Well, I knew it was going to be the single most important thing to our team members was going to be their financial security throughout this.
Sure.
And so the fire being on Wednesday morning, I think it was, I knew going in to that weekend, first of the month is coming up, and I know how these folks live sometimes and they need to make rent payments, And so we made sure by Monday afternoon, we had compensation in their hands for those team members that would depend on their tips. We had checks to cover the tips they would have made that weekend.
That's extraordinary, really.
How many and how many people did you lose? Anybody in those 4 months?
I mean, did you have more than normal attrition?
Right.
No, we didn't. In this business,
sometimes with dishwashing,
you're going to have it anyway.
Anyway, in 4 months,
we definitely lost some people along the way, but no more than we would have normally lost over a 4 month period.
Sure.
That's a third of a year,
right?
Sure. And we have pretty low turnover for an industry average wise. Right. Jakers does. We tend to retain our people, but we lost a few.
Yeah. Let me just do a quick ID. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is Justin Philbrick, who is a partner in Jakers and Red Robin and the director of operations for all of their the Jakers outlets.
So let me talk about the food. You brought some over here today. And,
I did.
And if I was on a diet, I've broken it already.
On a Sunday morning.
But you make one of your I guess calling cards as a restaurant is you do everything fresh. I mean, your coconut shrimp, which I think you sell hundreds of portions of it a day. I mean, you hand bread that. That's not something you buy in a package. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been places like Hawaii where they specialize in it, and they're shipping it in breaded from the mainland. You really do everything from scratch.
That's our goal. We're trying to put the best product out that we possibly can, and if we can buy a better product, we would do it.
Right.
But in most cases, we can't. We can't buy better steaks that are pre-cut, so we cut our own. We can't buy better burger that is pre-ground, so we grind our own. We can't buy better coconut shrimp, so we make our own. Any of our soups, our desserts, so forth,
the soups are
can't necessarily buy better ones, so we make them.
Clam chowder, lobster bisque. I go off my diet when I go there, but it's so good, though.
So
with the fresh onions, though. Okay.
So you are the chefs that you have. They've been with you a long time. The guys that have prepared all of these things and know the secret recipes?
We have a core group of cooks in our kitchen that have been around for a few years, absolutely. And we lean on those guys and we depend on them heavily, especially when we reopened back in June. And the amount of hours and effort that they put in, I just can't thank them enough. It was amazing.
Sure. So for the month of July, August, I mean, you only have a couple of months since you reopened. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing about the same level of business, more business, as a result of, the good publicity and the good works that you engaged in? Yeah,
way more business, actually. The first 4 weeks after we opened on June 23rd. And the 4-week period after opening was the busiest 4-week period in the history of Jakers of Missoula.
So listen, Scott, set the radio station on fire, and you become
God forbid.
I know.
Please.
Biggest radio station. In the country.
It was kind of a reopening of a restaurant, is what it felt like. I've been a part of several new restaurant openings, right. And you have this period of time known as a honeymoon in the industry, right. and we had a honeymoon when we opened, and it's still going on. Actually, we're still up considerably over last year, and. Interesting, just a fun way that we opened was Wednesday, June 22nd. We decided we had some new people. We wanted to cook all the food. We wanted to get them a chance to try all the food. So we went around and ordered everything on the menu. We wanted to test the new equipment in the kitchen that had been put together and make sure it could handle, this hood system could handle the smoke, the heat, etc. Cooked everything. And I said, guys, if it goes well, we're going to open at 4 o'clock. Surprise opening. We had been advertising June 23rd as our open for, 8 weeks or so prior. Everything goes smooth. At 4 o'clock, I make the call. Let's open the restaurant tonight. Everybody's obviously ecstatic because we're going to open. They're psyched. It was one of the amazing things of the process that even though the team was getting paid, when they came in to get their pay, all of them just hugs and, when can we get back to work? They wanted to work. They didn't know what to do
in the off time, though. Were they working at other
enjoying
places?
Their families?
Really?
Yeah. So some of them had second jobs, that they already worked anyway. We have a lot of students we employ, so they took the opportunity to get really good grades, things like that. But we made the call to open that restaurant at 4 o'clock that day. We put it out on Facebook only. Right. I think we called you guys.
Yep, you did.
As well. And within 2 hours, the restaurant was full.
That's amazing.
That's incredible.
It was pretty neat.
Now, how did your suppliers deal with the fact that you guys were out for 4 months?
Yeah. We called them, and we have another Jakers on the same warehouse. So they were able to keep all our products in stock and move enough to keep them rolling and stuff. So that wasn't a big deal for us.
When you say test out the new equipment, how much new equipment did you have to actually bring in?
Yeah. What does it cost?
And things like that.
How much did it cost?
It's the entire cost. I'll come out and tell you, it was north of $1 million when you start adding in.
Wow.
Business income loss and team member wages and rent and these sort of things. It doesn't take, and then obviously the cost of construction and repairs and that type of thing. So it got pretty big. What was where were you going
suppliers.
with the question?
The suppliers and what did it cost? And I'm looking at more than the employees.
What was the equipment? What had to get replaced?
Yeah. So and that was that's a really good question, and that's why I didn't want to lose it, because the actual damage from the fire was not that bad. You're talking about of our entire kitchen, maybe a 12th of it, somewhere in there, was actually damage from flames and heat and stuff. So we had about 15 pieces of equipment, some of them big like coolers and charbroilers and grills and that type of thing. A lot of them small, just like scales and clocks and that sort of thing. But the damage from the smoke was caused to, the front of the house, the ceiling tiles, that sort of thing, that took longer to repair. And then we ran into what they call code upgrades. So in order to get our building permits, we had to upgrade the kitchen to current code. Well, we built the restaurant in 95, 96 time frame. Yeah. And so a lot's changed since then. But the outcome has been great. We had to test quite a bit of new equipment, about 15 pieces of equipment, plus heating and cooling needed to be tested, hood systems. One of the code upgrades we had to do was the hoods needed to be taken out.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why it took 4 months for us to get it done. When you I've built a restaurant from the ground up in 90 days before. So that's less time than it took for us to remodel Jakers. Once we found out that we had to replace the hoods, we ordered them. If you're building a new restaurant, that's one of the first things you order. So it took some time to get that. And once those came, obviously we were able to go
Did
full
it lead
speed.
to any change in safety procedures in the restaurant?
Absolutely. It's much better. I mean, it depends on who you talk to, but people really can complain about these types of things. And certainly if, we didn't have code upgrade coverage in our policy, it would have been pretty difficult, but the outcome is much better. The kitchen is more comfortable. The kitchen is safer. For future occurrences, and I think everybody's a lot happier.
Has it led to more people wanting to work there? Have you had an uptick in people applying for jobs with you?
We always do interviews at Jakers. It's one of the reasons why I think we're successful is that we interview a lot of people. So anybody that wants an interview at Jakers gets one. And so as far as number of applicants, I think that's stayed about the same.
Sure.
Yeah.
Real quickly, so I noticed that my favorite salad bar, plate chiller.
You get this guy hungry
stayed.
talking about food.
You didn't change that out, which I'm thrilled about because that is one of my favorite things.
The chilled plates.
The chilled plate's crucial.
It's crucial.
It's crucial. But I want
not only chilled, but those things are frozen.
They're great. That's a great.
You want
addition.
a frozen plate for salad.
Right. When you go to a Chinese restaurant, you get a hot plate. Okay, it's the exact opposite. But I want to go back a little bit to kind of you and your partner Jake. Okay, because I think there's so first of all, you have a partner that has to get on board with the philosophy of what you want to do. Was that an easy decision for you guys to make, or was there some conversation back and forth about that?
I think it was. That was one of the reasons why coming on with Jakers 20 years ago that I stayed. You guys were talking about heroes earlier.
Right.
Jake Jones is my business hero, hands down, for what he's taught me and what he's exposed me to over the years by having the opportunity to run not only one restaurant, but being in charge of multiple operations at one time.
Well, I was going to ask that because reading your story and starting from really the ground up, how did you come into, you worked at Jakers, but how did that happen where, he brought you into the fold, like he took you under his wing and really
What stood out about you that led him to want to be your mentor?
Well, you guys already mentioned it earlier. Scott did, I believe, where if you ever go to Jakers and you see Justin, he's always moving. And I was that guy that started as a salad cook in the kitchen, making minimum wage to start, and then obviously moved up from there pretty well. Put myself through business school. Got recognized as a good cook. I had a passion for food, and that's what Jake recognized.
Right.
I had a pretty steady demeanor for the most part, although when I started managing at the age of 22, some would say it probably wasn't quite there, but it's definitely come along over time. But one of the things that I picked up on real early about Jake and real early about Jakers is that they did care about their employees and that hard work was going to be recognized. And the company only promoted from within, and I saw that and said, well, I'm pretty good at restaurants. I'm going to finish school because no one in my family has ever done it, but I don't really like school that much. I like to work. And that's what helped me.
Sure. Let me switch gears for here a minute.
Great.
It's an interesting story, though, how I got my job as director of operations.
Well, let's talk about that, and then I'll switch gears.
I was the general manager at the time, and Jake took us on a trip down to Scottsdale, Arizona. And we were just down there having meetings and checking out restaurants and that sort of thing.
Who's this that went on?
Oh, all our general managers from all the Jakers.
Okay, so the senior management team.
And I was the new guy. I was the fresh guy, and they were used to very, very serious approach to everything. And I said, guys, the Diamondbacks are playing right over in Phoenix. It's a playoff game. Randy Johnson's got to be pitching. We have got to go to this game. And it was kind of like everybody's like looking around going, whoa, what is he possibly suggesting here and that type of thing. And so I just went ahead and bought the tickets. And I brought them to the next meeting and I said, here they are, we're going.
Right.
And they're all looking at Jake and Jake says, hey, if you guys want to go to a game, let's go to a game. So I rallied the crew, I rallied the managers. We went to a baseball game. Right. And that's one of the reasons why Jake picked me, in addition to I completed my degree.
But also being brought in as you're a minority partner, or what are you, a minority partner?
I'm a 25% owner.
Okay, to be that, it's just you, right? Are there any other partners?
It's Jake and I mainly,
right.
And in each location, in different locations, we might have our general manager
have a piece
as a piece and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. I mean, that's an incredible story alone. I mean,
so you've been in the business 20 years now. Almost.
I've been with Jakers 20 years, right. 25 in the business.
Sure. There's a lot of changes over the last 25 years. And even in Missoula, little old Missoula, in the last months, you have lots of new restaurant choices and options. You know, if you go out to Reserve Street, you got, you know, Panda Express, and you got Native Wings, and you got Freddy's, and you got, you know, since you've been in there, you know, Plum. I mean, there's lots and lots of things. What is your strategy moving forward to stay fresh and competitive with a changing landscape?
Well, I can't reveal that. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, the consistency and, you know, always, you know, money is a byproduct of a job well done. And we just try to take care of every team member so that they'll take care of every guest. We've been doing that for years. You know, our mission is very, very simple at Jakers. You know, we could have a big, long mission statement, but it's not. It's this: never let a guest go away unhappy. And so we try to make sure that experience is great for them. And we're not perfect, obviously, but I think for the most part, we have something for everyone. And you mentioned some restaurants going in, and a lot of that is quick service and that sort of thing.
Right.
And they're going in because that's a fast growing segment of the market. But
what is the quick service?
The quick serve, yeah, where you can walk up to a counter, order
Better
your
than McDonald's,
food, go sit down. Yeah,
right.
Go sit down, maybe get some fresher ingredients. Maybe it has a perception of being a little more healthy, that type of thing.
Yeah, if you're Chipotle, at least for a while, had a perception of being healthy.
I wasn't gonna go there.
That, but I mean, there's a perception
Can't
of
badmouth
that.
the competition.
Yeah.
But you also bought into a restaurant chain, Red Robin, that's, you know, less than a mile from where your place is on Brook Street. So what was the thinking behind that?
Well, you know, it is diversity.
That's a national chain.
And it's diversity in my portfolio just because, you know, you've got a lower check average at Red Robin. You know, you're looking at $10 to $15, and Jakers is a little bit higher. So you're not necessarily creating competition for yourself, although I love to see our guests in both places when I'm in there. But it's the best burger you can get in a restaurant.
Right. It's
Go
the same
in,
reason
sit
why we
down
have
at a
different
restaurant.
Stations. It's like he has different products.
But I'm just trying to. I understand that. I'm just trying to
there's
figure the
more.
thought process. There's more.
There's more. Well, there's a lot you can learn from a national chain.
Right. That's important. That's
you know,
a good
they got
point.
buildings full of smart people just thinking up stuff all the time to teach you, and so we tap into that.
So how long have you had the Red Robin now?
Well, Jake is actually one of the original Red Robin franchisees. He actually built the first freestanding Red Robin. And that was in Park Center in Boise, Idaho. So he's been around with Red Robin since about 82.
Wow.
We wanted to do the Red Robin here in Missoula, and we opened that in 08. And that's when I started. I had been with Jakers since 97, but that's when I started getting more involved with the Red Robin.
Right. So that's been here 8 years.
Restaurant.
The Red Robin's been here 8 years now. Have there been changes from the national organization to that operation that are significant from when it first started?
Big time, yeah. I mean, and you may have noticed some of the things that we've done with people, place, and product. Just our approach to service has changed. It used to be sort of a timed, you know, get through this, make it as quick as possible, and it's definitely more personable now, and we allow the servers to have a little bit more say and, you know, what they say and do and that sort of thing. The product has changed tremendously in the last couple of years, going from wrapped burgers in baskets.
Right, remember that when it first started.
With our Angus lineup, with our 8-ounce Angus, fresh Angus patties, you know, served on a plate, and our salad program has changed quite a bit. And then there's our place, you know, with the new decor, just a little bit more sophisticated. It's a polished casual restaurant.
Right. Not to divulge any secrets, because you won't. Is Jakers / Red in an expansion mode? Are you always looking at new opportunities? Or are you happy with the portfolio that you now have as a restaurant company?
You know, to not want to grow, you know, wouldn't be in our nature. You know, so we're always looking for a good opportunity out there to expand not only Jakers and what we do there, but also expand the Red Robin brand in the state of Montana. There's a lot of opportunity to do that, and I can certainly see that happening.
Right.
Is in this market, is there a product niche that you don't think is being properly met in the restaurant, you know, category?
Maybe hot dogs. No, I have no idea.
Well, you know, no.
They tried hot dogs. It didn't work.
You know, at Missoula, that's one of the great things about Missoula is the food. And the amount of different kinds that you can get in Missoula.
Right.
You know, it's like nowhere else, from, you know, the food trucks that we're starting to see.
Sure.
You know, I thought at first maybe that was it. You know, maybe a brewery with good food.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the food trucks is a very interesting phenomena. I mean, I don't know if it's here to stay, but I mean, you go to Portland and there are 4 or 5 places
Oh,
in
it's
Portland
incredible.
where it's an entire city block all the way wrapped around on all four sides of food carts.
like a
And at
food wall.
lunchtime, there's, thousands of people out there. So, I mean, I don't know if it's going to last. I'm not, in the rain, does it, is it busy in the rain? Does it lead, if somebody's very successful in a food cart, does that lead to them opening a fixed, site restaurant?
Who knows?
Yeah, you don't know, but it's certainly taking over most cities.
Does our geography prohibit us from having certain types of food?
No, not anymore. Not with the deliveries you can get on things multiple times a week on fresh fish and these types of things. I don't think so. I think it's
Kosher deli. That's just a population issue.
it's probably the biggest thing to hold it back would be just having the market, a large enough market to take some of these niche type things that you're talking about and actually make them sustainable as a business. You could probably open a great restaurant that, served what's your favorite food that you can't get in Missoula that
Chinese.
You got back east.
A ton of Chinese. Well, Asian food in general.
Well, whatever example there, but, you might not be able to, just have maybe enough people, going out to eat on a regular basis because, to sustain a restaurant and do well in this business, you have to be busy.
Right. How often do people fill out the comment cards and those
Every
things?
day.
And can you remember an example of something someone recommended that you guys hadn't thought of and made and you implemented?
Most of the time when they recommend things, we have to point it out that it's on the menu already at Jakers because we have so many things. But a lot of salad bar items. People ask for, extra different things on the salad bar.
What are they asking for? I'm curious.
Oh, for a while it's, they want more vegetables, and then we do that, and then they say there's not enough salads, so we put more salads.
Hopefully it's not more kale.
I'm trying to think.
Or it's a lot of times when we get a request for an item, it's an item that we once had on the menu, but the sales didn't support it, so we took it away. And so we try to, through our feature program, we try to sort of get those things onto a feature every now and then, like a 3-pepper chicken corn chowder. If that was a soup that you loved at Jakers, it starts on Thursday. We'll have that soup
What is
through
the
the
most
25th.
popular soup?
A lobster bisque.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So
we can't make enough
pizzas, right? And you make your own pizza dough.
We actually put La Petite Autre on the map as far as pizza dough goes.
Yeah.
I went over there before they ever made pizza dough, and I said, look, I'm putting in a stone ground pizza oven, a wood-stone pizza oven, and I need a great wheat and white Italian pizza dough. And they made it for me, and it was amazing. And so we eventually dropped the wheat, which was what we probably should have kept. It was so good, but not as much demand for that.
Right.
And we still use their pizza dough to this day, but they've gone full on grocery store. You can get it in different markets in town and stuff with it.
Gluten-free?
We have a gluten-free menu,
right?
Also a vegetarian menu. We try to keep up with that. That's such a changing environment with that.
Totally. Do you think there's too much information out there?
It's education for even a guy like me who's in the restaurant regularly to try and keep up with the different questions about, is this gluten-free, is that gluten-free. So we have a list of every item in our restaurant, and we're able to go look at that and see if that dressing or that particular thing.
Occasionally, as you know, eating patterns change. I mean, for example, I would think in a place that's, getting and continues to be health conscious that maybe either desserts are not as, sought after as they were before, or I could also see where I'm going out to dinner once every 2 weeks, so I'm going to splurge and have desserts. What's your experience been on the dessert side of things?
The people that I think like getting dessert are the people that like getting dessert. If you're not going to sell, dessert necessarily to somebody who's not used to having it, unless it's maybe a special occasion. But there are those people that they know they want dessert, and we keep our desserts. We make them all in-house at Jakers, and with our creme brulee and our mud pie. And those old favorites that we've always done and done consistently and done well, we do pretty well with desserts.
Justin, where do you like to go around town? You mentioned that Missoula has good restaurants and good food. What are some of your favorite non-Jakers, Red Robin's restaurants that you enjoy?
Anywhere new.
Okay.
Because you want to check it out and see what they got.
Yep. Anywhere new. I want to go to that restaurant once and maybe even another time after that, just to see how they're doing. I want to know what they're up to and that sort of thing. When I go out to eat, generally it's with my family, and where do they all want to go? They want to go to Jakers and Red Robin. So, and my kids, it's tough. It's hard for them because they want to go to Red Robin, for the fun and the atmosphere, but then they want to go to Jakers because they want to get things like salmon and steak and try different types of food. Your menu is so
diverse. I mean, it is the largest menu.
But it's also got to be exciting to see like a 5 on Black in Missoula do well, right? Mm-hmm. And to expand, because I think that speaks to the market, but also speaks to an interesting concept that
Well, I can tell you, being here 20 years, 20 years ago, Missoula was not a food town.
Definitely not.
And if you want to be one of the best small towns in America, or you want to attract diverse people moving here, you got to have a good food culture. And so you need a Jakers, you need anchor restaurants like Jakers, but you also need these other things. You're not unhappy that a bunch of these other people are coming to
boats, right? If
no,
people are going out, that's good.
if a new Japanese sushi place opens and it's good, that's good for you too. The more people think about going out to eat, what do we want tonight?
Exactly.
Well, and just the redevelopment of this area, this side of town, and what's happened with Cabela's and the new retail businesses going in over there, and what's happening at the mall, and there's restaurants are going to come with that. That's something we have to accept.
There are a whole bunch of new restaurants coming in.
For a while there, we didn't get anything new in Missoula. And people sort of get stagnant, and then they're not going out to eat as much. But I think you're right. When there are more choices and more places to go, the one thing I know about competition is it makes you better. It makes you take a hard look at everything that you do and say, is this the best it can be? Should we be serving this product? Can we make it better? And without competition, you're not necessarily looking to do that every day.
Sure.
Has the mall construction hurt Red Robin at all, traffic-wise?
I think people are avoiding the mall. But just from driving over there, they've got it pretty well sorted out. The road loops around the construction, no problem. In fact, it's probably, with that T intersection and not people coming from the parking lot right at you, it's almost a little bit easier to get around. So, yes, I think it's been a little bit different, but with the back-to-school season, we've been obviously tremendously busy.
All right, we're butting up against a break. You're listening to What Do You Know with Arnie and Scott. Our guest is Justin Philbrick from Jakers and Red Robin. We'll be right back after this with our final segment. All right, we're back.
So, Justin, I know what you've done for your employees. What about in terms of customer appreciation? People waited 4 months. I know a couple of times I didn't pay close attention and said, let's go to Jakers, and drove by and it wasn't open. So what kind of promotions and events and celebrations have you been doing over the last couple of months and may be continuing to do for your customers?
Sure, good question. Well, it was hard to know what to expect when we were going to reopen.
Yes.
Was everybody going to find out right away? Were they all going to come to try Jakers right away? Were we going to have to advertise, these types of things? We actually even had to dispel rumors. We'd get calls, hey, are you guys, we heard you're closing forever, this type of stuff. And obviously that was never the intention. But, we decided that we had to build, lunches. We had to build happy hour. We had to build dinner back up. So at the lunch, we went ahead and offered $3 off our soup and salad bar. We know people love eating that. And that's actually still going on during lunch from 11 to 4. It's going to end soon, though. We're going to run that through Sunday, September 11th. Sunday, September 11th, actually. And then we're going to change that over to actually an NFL Sunday deal where we have happy hour drinks all day. Of course, we have DirecTV and the NFL Sunday ticket.
Nice.
And we'll also do the $3 off soup and salad bar on Sundays at that point.
That saves me money. I don't have to get the NFL package, and I can get it. I can use it to buy soup and salad.
By the way, is there
the other thing we
is there a team affiliation there? Any affiliation?
Oh well, I'm a New England Patriots fan all the way. So I probably just
and the Montana.
If I had any fans from the show today,
I'm a Giant fan. He's a Giant fan. I told you that when I first.
And we open against Dallas.
Well, the other thing that we did when we opened though, and we let the folks know about this was anybody that had a birthday, the 4 months that we were closed, we have probably the best birthday deal in town. It's a half price meal on the day of your birthday. Bring your ID in. We'll take care of you. Meal of your choice. And we offered that deal through July 31st. So obviously overwhelming amount of people that had birthdays in that time came in, took advantage of that. And then, the next thing coming up is our Jakers Crab Festival. It starts Thursday. So
the what? The crab?
It's a crab festival.
Where are you getting your crabs from?
We have all over. We have a whole menu dedicated to crab. We have king crab, brown crab, Dungeness crab, snow crab. We have steaks with crab on them, pastas with crab in them, mushrooms with crab on top. We have. So that's just if you're in town for for Labor Day weekend.
We love food.
We will be here. That sounds great.
But that's going on for a month, so you have till September 25th to come take
That's
advantage
terrific.
of that. So yeah, we're just trying to do a lot of things to make sure everybody knows Jakers is up and running again, and
So are those
better than ever.
promotions just at this one or at the other ones as well?
No, our crab festival is all 5 Jakers. We do our features simultaneously in all the locations and have.
So do all the 5 Jakers serve about the same amount of people a month? Are you about the same size?
Each restaurant varies in sales a bit, but we have our higher performers and a little bit lower. Great Falls is always right up there.
How's Meridian?
Meridian does okay. Summer is the slow time in Meridian, and then when you
Yes.
get into fall and winter, that's when we actually pick up.
You serve
we're just
over
getting into
almost
that season.
100,000 meals a month. Is that about right?
Just with the Jakers, yeah. I mean,
Just with Jakers.
the Red Robins each serve 20 to 25,000 meals.
So
a
you're
month.
serving 150,000 meals a month. Does that get the attention of distributors and food purveyors and the other guys?
It does.
That's a lot of food.
Yeah, it does. We do okay with those contracts.
And
And now about alcohol. And by the way, no, but seriously,
Right, you have
it's a
liquor licenses.
huge business.
Yeah.
That's a big expense, right? The liquor licenses and
we have to recoup them, right?
Right,
It's a big
exactly.
Well, that would be
expense.
Montana. Liquor licenses aren't,
The same everywhere.
$800,000 every state you go to.
Is that
so
right?
yeah, definitely
and then more
cheaper in
plentiful
Idaho.
in Idaho, yeah.
Cheaper in Idaho. I mean, they're still worth some money, but not to the same extent. Montana.
There's a really interesting restaurant in Boise, this wine bar that you actually put a card in and it serves you a 4-ounce, 6-ounce, or 8-ounce thing.
They have those in Europe. I've seen them all over Europe.
Are there any concepts like that you're going to be like new concepts that you think about bringing into Jakers or Red Robin, like different, besides items, menu items?
I think with Jakers, our service is always going to be on a personal level, and you go there to make a connection with your server or bartender or manager. Red Robin is starting to bring in this Ziosk program that they do that has the ability to reorder an appetizer, reorder a drink right from the table. We're not on it yet in our group, but I'm sure eventually we will. Once you've ordered a drink and the server has carded you and rung in the first one, it then becomes open and you can reorder a beverage for yourself, or you can order an appetizer from this machine that's on the Wi-Fi that's on the table.
Well, a lot of European and big city restaurants have have the equivalent of an iPad, and you could actually do all the ordering. Mm-hmm. There's one in Minneapolis. There's
at the airport. Yeah, that Japanese place.
Yes. Yeah. You can order everything, and then the server just brings your food. That kind of cuts across your idea of more personalized service. It's less personalized service.
Well, I could see us at Jakers getting to where an order can be sent to the kitchen from the table. We're not on the level of handhelds yet.
Right.
The technology just isn't there yet. I mean, you can get it done. You can make it happen, but at the scale that we do, with sometimes 15 servers on, 3 bartenders, you'd have to have a lot of these units in order to make it happen.
Right, and it's a little complicated for your first-time people.
It's just not there yet.
Just like the new parking meter system in Missoula, I still see people every day. Can't figure out how to punch in the numbers and do it the right way.
He's going to make that mobile.
But that's been a good deal though. Once you figure out how it works, you can go park in 3 or 4 different spots, and you don't have to keep plugging meters.
Right, and then next time they already got your license plate in there and all that. You swipe your credit card and you just go.
Exactly.
So it's pretty good.
Well, this has been, we're butting up against the hour.
I know.
This is fascinating.
Fascinating.
Good guess. Arnie has wanted to get you in here since we started the show.
Well, and also since I saw the article, because I thought that was a tremendous, compliment to you and to Jakers to be able to do that for your employees. I know few people who, even good-hearted people that would pay and do that for 4 months. I mean, I don't know what it exactly costs you, and I'm not asking you, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of payment to employees.
I was going to ask, what did it take to train all those people and to create that loyalty? What's the value? What's the value of that? It's sometimes you can't even put a dollar value.
Well, and that's what it came down to. The cost to replace your people is far more than paying them during a closure like that. So,
sure.
As I said earlier, the decision was easy to make. There was no other choice. We had to do it. We just knew it was the right thing to do, and we made it work.
Justin, for the community, we thank you. For your employees, they've already thanked you. You've been a great guest. For our listeners, we got Crab Fest. We got $3 off still on the salad bar. We have, the NFL ticket on the weekend. We got a lot of things.
By the way, they do catering too, right? They do.
We do some catering events. We'll be at the wine festival. We do a lot of events that involve, a lot of times there's some sort of donation involved. Right. We fed the state tournament baseball down in Florence. We fed 450 people, just on us, that type of thing. So,
sure.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing you at Jakers or Red Robin in the near future. And thanks.
Thank you, Justin Philbrick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I will see you.
See you next Sunday.
Okay, see you then, Arnie. Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290, 1015 FM, and newstalkkgvo.com.